Hey, first, second, and third grade friends, welcome to Art Online. I'm really bummed that we cannot be in the art room, but it is important for us all to stay safe right now, and we can still make amazing artwork from our houses. You were sent with a packet of stuff to get you started and some art supplies with some more to come. We still have oil pastels and markers that are on their way to you in the next couple of weeks. But everything else in that, in your bag is important for you to keep track of. There's not going to be any more paper coming to your houses. So it's really, really important that you maintain your materials. So let's get started by just refreshing our memories about some of those art room expectations that we talked about last year, because all of those will still apply to your houses too. So let's start first. You're doing your first lesson via a video, but I have expectations that at least at some point you try to join one of the live lessons. The live lessons are going to be an opportunity for us to have some more discussion about art, to share with our friends, to see our friends' faces. But I do know that sometimes you're just going to need to do art on your own time, which is why I have these recorded videos. But if you come to a live lesson, the expectation is that you come in just like you would enter the art room, silently with your supplies ready to go. So you should be on mute. I'll have in Schoology, you should be checking Schoology every day, and the links to all the live lessons are in the week. But also it'll tell you in the updates what supplies you will need to be ready for that class, because class is gonna start on time. So in a live meet, we shouldn't have to wait for you to go and get your paper because you forgot it. Our class needs to start on time because everybody will be there ready to learn, and you should be ready too. So when we come in, we're nice and quiet, just like we would be in class. And we're gonna stay nice and quiet for the lesson. I'm gonna give a lesson, I'm gonna give some demonstrations, we're gonna share some stories, but there will always be times when we will have some discussion. So it's important when we're having a discussion that you wait to be called on, and that you're respectful to other people who are speaking, and that you remain on mute unless you've been called on. Because even if you're not speaking, we might have mom, dad, grandma, big brother, big sister, whoever else is in your house. They might be on a Google Meet or might be on a phone call, or little brother or sister might need something and be talking. So we need to make sure that everybody, not just ourselves, but the other people in our family are not being disruptive too. So we're going to keep the background noise silent by keeping on mute unless we've been called on to talk. Your materials we talked about a little bit. You should have a safe space for you to store your materials, and you should know what materials you need to come to lesson with. You need to remember, normally in the art room, a lot of you have probably made a mistake of, accidentally breaking a crayon, leaving some markers off the lids, but because we share materials in the art room, we haven't run out. But you only have one set for your house, and I don't have an extra set to send to you if you don't maintain your materials and use them respectfully and safely and keep track of them and keep the lids on your markers to keep them from drying out. So it is your responsibility to keep track of your materials and to only use them when you've been directed. You don't want to just go ahead and cut up all of the colored paper that was sent and then find out in a few weeks when we do a paper collage that you've used all your materials. Okay, if you run out of materials, if you break materials, you're welcome to reach out to me, and I can help let you know what else you're going to need to go out and purchase on your own. But unfortunately, there's no extras for me to send home to you. So I apologize about that. But that just means that the responsibility is on you to keep track and maintain your materials. It's extra important so that you're able to complete your assignments, so that you get credit for all the work that's required of you for your art grade. You are also responsible to clean up. In the art room, we would always take time to clean up our own workspace and work together to put the materials away and to leave the room nice and tidy for the next class. That includes at home. I'm not going to be there to clean up after you. That's going to be your job. And it's not the job of the adult in your house or big brother or big sister to come and help clean up your materials. You are going to be responsible for doing that. Now, I'm not sending home super messy things. You should be able to maintain and use your things respectfully. And remember that if you're using markers and you're worried about coloring off the edge of your paper, that you're going to get some scrap paper to put down so that you keep the table nice and clean that you're working on. Okay, so I expect you to maintain your materials respectfully, but also maintain your houses respectfully. And if you make a mess, you clean it up. I also want you to remember how we would work in the art room. Remember, we'd be silent during lesson, but when it's work time, we were usually allowed to talk quietly with our neighbors, because when we're being creative, sometimes we like to talk too. So there'll be times in my lesson when I'll tell you that it's okay on a Google Meet to unmute yourself and that we can talk politely with friends. But if anybody's being crazy or disrespectful, then you're going to need to excuse yourself from our lesson. So that's some of the basics about being on the Google Meet live lessons, and I do hope you have an opportunity to join us at some point for the live lessons. So to start today, we're going to talk a little bit about what is art. I'm going to share with you a lot this year. We're going to use one book to kind of introduce a lot of the topics we'll talk about, and it's called How Art Works by Sarah Hull. And I really enjoy this book because it gives a really nice overview and shows us lots of different types of artwork. So we're going to share from that. We're going to talk about what is art and what is an artist.
Okay, so what is art? Art has meant different things at different times and to different people. Originally, it is simply meant something made by hand. Nowadays, it's mostly used for pictures, sculptures, and other objects created to be looked at. Art has been around for as long as there have been people. The earliest known works of art are rock paintings. There are famous cave paintings we'll look at later this year that have been found in France and other countries made long, long ago. Long ago, people believed that art had magical powers. 4,000 years ago, ancient Egyptians thought art could help someone live on after death. In fact, the ancient Egyptian word for sculptor, that's somebody who's making some three-dimensional artwork, translates as he who keeps alive. This is a sculpture bust of Queen Nefertiti. Lots of art that followed that time was made for religious reasons. It would tell myths or stories from holy books to glorify gods and goddesses. So many artists that first got their starts were being paid by different church and religions to make the artwork, kind of like an illustrator for stories from the Bible or other myths that were tied to religious practices. By the 15th century, European artists were making portraits and painting scenes too. They were also getting better and better at making their pictures look real. And we'll look at some more examples of that later on as well. So we went from art being made for religious purposes to art starting to be made for everyday people. During the 19th and 20th centuries, new materials made art cheaper and easier. Artists also had more freedom to make pictures of whatever they liked. Some tried to capture simple everyday experiences, such as this one here by Edward Hopper. This was painted in 1929. It's called Chop Suey. And it's a picture of two women out having lunch together. Other artists began to experiment with radically new approaches to painting. They would use shapes and colors as things in their own right, rather than copying how things looked. So that's when we're going to talk about moving from art that's made to be as realistic as possible to art as an abstract idea. Ideas about art have been changing for as long as there have been artists, but in the last 100 years, this has been happening faster than ever. So we have one other important question for us to answer as we start our first art class today. And that question is, what is an artist? Today, people usually think of artists as people who are extremely creative and full of new ideas that they develop in their own way. But this wasn't always the case. In the past, artists were seen as skilled craftspeople. They made art in order for wealthy clients and often working together in workshops. So a painting like this one here, called Tobias and the Angel, would be the work of many people, not just one single artist. So the most important details would be painted by the workshop leader. But the simpler parts, such as the background, would be done by the assistants. Many workshops also had assistants who were responsible for mixing up the colors and setting up everything for the main artist to come in and work. Notice how Tobias and the Angel have similar left hands. Workshops often kept a set of drawings to copy, so the hands were probably copied from the same ones. You see how they look so similar? The status of artists began to change about 500 years ago. Art came to be understood as the act of a creative genius, and people started to see artists more as they do today. One of the most famous artists and one of the first artists to really achieve that celebrity status was Leonardo da Vinci. And this is a self-portrait of Leonardo da Vinci. So a self-portrait is a picture of a person. That's a portrait, but the self-portrait is a picture of yourself. So the person that you're drawing in your portrait is you. And this year in art class, you will definitely make a self-portrait. Many of the powerful rulers hired Leonardo da Vinci to make paintings and sculptures, even though he didn't always finish them, and his drawings were greatly admired. Leonardo drew whatever he liked. The animals on this page are all drawings of his, where he would just sit and sketch from observations. Today, artists tend to create something first and sell it later, which is much different from back in the day when artists would be paid to do something and then to complete it. If an artist is famous, that adds hugely to the value of their work. But not everything has changed. Many artists still employ assistants, especially to help with large works of art or technical processes such as printmaking. Before the 1500s, artists rarely signed their work as people didn't think their names were as important.
All right, we'll get started with our first part of practice work. So every week that we meet, we'll introduce a topic, we'll have some discussion about it, and we'll be working through the packet that you got that talks about all the elements of art. All of you should remember at least one element of art from last year. So I want you to think of one in your head, maybe say it out loud. Which one did you choose? Did you choose color, line, shape? Those 3 ones we talked about all the time. Whether you were kindergartner last year or first or second grader, you should at least remember those 3. So we're going to review those basic ones, and we're going to cover all of the other elements of art. And we're going to practice a sheet each week. So to get started today, you need to have that packet out with you. So you should have brought that with you, and we're going to get started. I want you to turn to the element of art, line. Line is the one we're going to work on together today. So turn to that page and grab a pencil. You will need a pencil for this part.
All right, so I have my first page here that I flipped to. Today we're going to talk about the element of art of line. Okay, a line, I think we all talked last year about a line is a dot that went for a walk, right? Dot went for a walk, so it looks like a line. Here's another good description, is a mark that is longer than it is wide. Okay, so a line is any type of mark that we're making, and we have some great examples here. You all should remember the big chart that we had on the art room bulletin board of all the different examples of lines. We practiced a lot of those last year, and we're going to review those and practice a few today. But some of those examples were vertical and horizontal lines. We had diagonal lines and dashed or dotted lines, zigzags, curves. Remember, we practiced spirals. So there's all types of different lines. And this down here talks about some of the ways that we use lines in art. So we have contour lines. Contour lines show the outline of an object. So anytime we're really starting on an art project, the first thing we do is create those contour lines. We do the outside of what we're drawing, right? We're showing the general shape, and this is without really adding the detail. We're sketching the shape, the outside. That's our contour lines. We have cross contour lines, and those follow the contour or the outline or the shape object and emphasizes its form. So that starts, the cross contour lines start to add the details, right? Right here, it looks just like a flat pumpkin because it's just the outline. But here we know that this pumpkin has ridges along the outside. We can talk about the line quality. Remember, we talked about thick or thin lines. Sometimes that's also referred to as the weight of a line, because a thicker line would feel like a heavier line, like it weighs more than a very thin line, which would be very light in weight. We can use line in our artwork, right? If we use a variety of different lines, it can look like it has movement or excitement in our artwork. Lines are also really important when we're shading our art. We'll definitely be using some lines to add some shading to artwork this quarter. We can hatch the lines. That's when we make thin lines that are close together or farther away. Then we can also cross hatch those. So all the hatch ones follow the same direction, but the cross will overlap with each other and go back and forth. So cross, right? Just like a cross. We have parallel lines, and the closer they are together, the shadier that spot will look, or if they're spaced apart, it will appear lighter. Okay, so those are just some examples. The work you have to do today is to fill in these boxes according to the directions. So first, fill the shape in with some cross contour lines. So let's remind ourselves what that looks like. The cross contour lines are going to emphasize the form. Okay, so some cross contour lines are going to add more of those details. So I can start with some cross contour lines by adding details in my leaf. And I'll add some more curved lines here, and I'll put some maybe a little closer together to make it darker and then lighter in value. I can use some of those contour lines here to make my apple appear to have a shape that comes out at me by using more curved lines here. I can add some other lines here, and I can do some cross-hatching lines to start to add maybe some shadow at the bottom. So you can be creative in how you're going to add your lines. Maybe right here, I can make this look like there's a bite taken out of my apple. Okay, so contour lines are the outside. The cross contour starts to get into the inside, the more details of my form. Okay, next, fill in the circles to show hatch and crosshatch lines. Remember to draw the lines along the contour of the circle. So the contour is our shape. So my hatch lines are not going to cross over each other. They're all going to follow the same direction. So I'm going to match the shape here, or the curve of my circle. And I'm just going to curve them back and forth to practice some hatch lines. It's turning my flat circle to look more like a three-dimensional form. Now my cross-hatching lines, I'm going to do the same thing I already did once, because that's hatching. Then cross-hatching means I'm going to do the same thing in the other way where it crosses over top of my line. So I get to practice my hatch lines, my contoured hatch lines again. And then I'll do the same thing but the other direction. Okay, these are crisscrossing, they're cross-hatching, they're crossing over each other. Next, draw a line or multiple lines that show interesting line quality. Now, remember, everything here that we're talking about, we have examples here. So what do they mean when they say line quality? We can refer back to the front. Refers to the thickness or thinness of a line, also called the line weight. So how heavy or light does our line look? And variation can add excitement and movement. So let's think some examples. Draw a line or multiple lines that show interesting line quality. Oh, been thinking a lot about the beach lately. So I'm going to draw some wavy lines here. And on a few of my lines that I'm making, I'm going to color those in, because that's going to add, it's going to make that whole line become a nice thick line, right? I can't just pick up a thicker pencil. I have one type of pencil lead, makes a certain kind of line weight, but I can add them together and color them in to make a nice thick line. So already that's starting to look more interesting, right? Just by playing with the thin or thickness, the line weight. Color this one in too. All right, so I want you to keep playing around in this box, really fill it in with different line quality. All right, now these last boxes. Test out different types of lines below. Label the type of line once you are finished. We've got examples here, but you should remember other examples from in the classroom, like spirals. I'll label my lines. Some zigzags. So it's important as you work on your lines should totally fill the space provided. And we fill the space provided because it gives us more opportunities to practice. And the more that we practice an art skill, the better that we're going to get. So you need to continue to finish your whole page. So we'll do one of these for each element of art throughout first quarter. And this got us going through the line. So make sure that you complete this as part of your lesson number 1.
All right, so lesson 1, we talked about a reminder about what art is, what an artist is. That's you. You are an artist. Whether you're making your most favorite artwork right now or you're still learning, we are all in different stages of being an artist, and all of the work that you create is art. And we will practice all of our art skills to make you feel like a more confident artist, but you are truly already an artist. We also practiced our line sheet. You should have completed the back of your line sheet as part of your work today. We're going to utilize lines as we work tomorrow with assignment number 1. One more thing that you can do, if you'd like to get started in your sketchbook, you can. This sketchbook is going to help give us ideas for our artwork all quarter. Now, I don't want you to go ahead and fill up all the pages because you're going to have some assignments in here and you're going to do your warm-up exercises. Just like every art assignment we've had, we usually practice it once, right? And we don't want to practice on our final piece of paper because if we make a mistake, it's harder to fix. So we want to do our warm-ups in here. So I want you to take some time to start sketching a couple ideas. By the end of this week, you should have 3 or 4 art ideas in here. And where they come from is your choice. Maybe they are going to be sketches of some of your favorite book or cartoon characters. Maybe they are going to be pictures of pets or people that you love. Maybe they're going to be places like landscapes that you'd like to go to or that you've been. Or maybe they're just going to come from up here. Crazy ideas that you have about animals that combine together or dreams that you've had. Art can be made from just about anything. So what are ideas that you've had for art pieces you'd like to make? I want you to go ahead and do about 3 different sketches in here. Now, when you sketch in here, you should only sketch in pencil. Because as you get to markers and our oil pastels, those can bleed through the paper and make a mess. So this should just be for pencil because we should be able to fill this up on the front and the back of pages. So when you work on your first 3 sketches, you should have 1, 2, 3, right? Just in really using 1.5 pieces of paper in your sketchbook. Okay? So then for tomorrow, let's be ready for lesson part 2. Lesson part 2, you should have your line sheet with you. You might want to reference that as we work on our name. We're going to need a blank piece of paper, one of your thick white project papers. Bring your sketchbook. It's always good to have your sketchbook in any lesson because you never know when you might have a little art inspiration and need to take some notes or make a little sketch. And you'll need a pencil for tomorrow. You will not need your crayons yet. You will use some sort of color in your work, but you don't have to worry about that for your lesson tomorrow. So make sure you have all of your tools and you join lesson tomorrow or watch the part 2, and we'll get started on your first full assignment. See you tomorrow.